Welcome one and all to Last Stop Penn Station podcast featuring Cary Silkin and Ian Riccaboni. They dive deep into Cary's wealth of stories, and no subject is off limits. From the world of wrestling to his ticket agency, growing up in New Jersey, drug-fueled underground days, hustling in the French Quarter of New Orleans, and endless days and nights in New York City, every story is worth telling.
Welcome, everyone, once again to another episode of Last Stop Penn Station. It's Ian Riccaboni and our guest of honor, Cary Silkin. How are you, Cary?
I'm okay. And now, looking at you, gandering at you from this angle now, with the mullet, and now with your hair growing in again,
right?
You maybe with a little bit of Lucille Ball style red, you could be Red Rooster.
Oh, what if I was the Red Rooster Camp Cock-a-doodle-doo? Be a great Halloween costume, right?
Yeah, well, you might keep it going. You never know. Who knows what you might be up to?
Right? I could be like a fashion icon. I got a lot of good feedback on the hair, and the fans are about to start to see that on Ring of Honor television coming up with the Peer Tournament. And you got a lot of good feedback too, especially, let's take it 2 weeks ago to the episode we did on some of the carnival attractions.
Yeah, if you're a wrestling fan or a wrestling historian, or if you're not a wrestling, you should. If you're a younger listener and you're wondering about why we're talking about the carnival, please listen to this episode, because once again, the origins of pro wrestling harken back to the carnival era, and I got some good feedback from people, and I was also reminded of by our good friend Todd Sinclair, who's one of the participants in the ROH Fantasy Draft.
Yeah, we've gotten great feedback on that too, and some surprising selections. And it was taped before Xavier had passed away, and we go into some depth about. That was one of the only things that was edited, because we actually made a comment that we'd hope to see him back in Ring of Honor, and I think we're all rooting for that. But yeah, go check that out. YouTube.com/Ring of Honor. But yeah, Todd was in the fantasy draft. You were the official for the fantasy draft.
Yes. As well as the other participants were your partner, Caprice Coleman, your announcing partner, and Bobby Cruz.
Bobby Cruz, absolutely. And if you ever want to know why he's called Beanbag, maybe we could share that someday. Maybe not.
Maybe we can. And the sad passing of Xavier, and I have to mention this I had two losses, of people who impacted my life over the last week. One of them, all the years I've done rave review tickets, and we're going back to pre-internet when people would call. Mm-hmm. And in all that time, and working prior to rave review and getting to speak often to some of these customers, very rarely would you get to meet any of them. There was a handful that, after you developed a relationship and a rapport, if you really grooved with them. One of them was the great Jerry Kossoff, who he's no longer with us, but a great man. His wife loved Bruce.
Oh,
Jerry. We're talking. This is in the 90s into the 2000s. So at that point, they were both in their 60s, and Mickey Kossoff, who's still with us, and I still speak with, she loved Bruce. And Jerry was a very generous guy, and he was a very successful guy. He was a self-made man, had a marketing business. He used to like to take people out. So with that in mind, I got to know him. And one time he invited myself and one of our friends and character who's mentioned and is going to get mentioned a lot more as we get further in the podcast, but Disgustin' Dustin. But Jerry invited Dustin and myself to, I feel like we spoke about this, but maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Anyway, Bruce was playing in Fort Lauderdale at the, I don't know what's the arena, the BT.
Oh, geez, I only know the War Memorial because that's where.
No. What's the big arena in the Fort? The Sunrise. No. It's
Sunbank.
Well, the main arena in Fort Lauderdale. Mm-hmm. Bruce was doing a couple of nights there, and Jerry had rooms at the Ritz-Carlton.
Wow!
And he invited myself. He goes, "Bring a friend of yours down." You know, he just. Was a very generous guy. So I got to meet a lot of Jerry stories, but the point is he was just a very generous, wonderful man. And besides him, there's only been a handful of guys that I met. A guy named Nick Birdie. He was a big Yankee fan, and he was a concert fan, and he used to like to go to the restaurant Angelo's, which I don't think you ever made it to.
Never made it to it, no.
You know, it became a Ring of Honor. You know, if you ask some of the Ring of Honor veterans, I introduced them, and our producer, AJ, can vouch for me. Phenomenal restaurant on Mulberry Street, which they had... As my father used to say, and I am Jewish, but my father used to use the expression, there was some Jewish lightning.
Oh, jeez. An unexplained,
right. A year and a half ago. But Angelo's was there forever, and I got to know Nick Birdie, and he used to like to go there. Sometimes I'd meet him there. Oh, let's say he liked like Bob Seger or Billy Joel, and he'd go to Angelo. No matter what it was, he'd go to Angelo's before the show. And AJ could vouch for this also. There was a point in time if we went to New York, whether it was to a ball game or to a concert or to a Broadway thing, as many restaurants as there were, time permitting, we would go to Angelo's. It was just so good. But another one of my customers, a gentleman named Glenn Gershaw, and he called me for years, my age, and he'd always want, his son is a musician, and Glenn would want, Cary, you got to get me 4 good tickets. They got to, he was very particular. I want to be like 7th row in the center. He used to like, it would be like Korn or Slipknot or these very heavy acts that really didn't appeal to me. I invited him one time to go see Jethro Tull. He's like, nah, but he loved heavy music, and he was such a nice guy. I met him. What show? Someone was playing at the Sands, and I didn't want to go to the show. It was a Slipknot type group, or one of these heavy acts. And I got to meet him. And then about a year ago, he called me up. He lives in Jersey. He called me up and he said, "Hey, I'd like to take you out to dinner." I go, "Well, when there's a show." He goes, "Well, I'm only an hour from you. Why don't we," he liked Emerald's Steakhouse.
Yeah. "Why
don't we go to Emerald's?" I'm like, "You don't have to." I said, "Well, you don't take me to dinner." I go, "But I'd love to meet you." Mm-hmm. So I met him and his wife, and he had gone through had been going through a cancer battle, and but he was sort of on the other end of it. And I get a strange phone call this week from a North Jersey number, and it was his son, Danny. And Danny I had never spoken to, but I'm sure a lot of Glenn's heavy metal was because of his son. Mm-hmm. And Danny told me that his father's battle was lost. And I was just like, geez. And then on Facebook yesterday, or I guess last night, one of my friends from high school era, he was a couple years younger than me, Bob Stokas, we used to call him Birdie. I haven't seen him in 20 years, and maybe I only spoke on the phone with him for maybe a couple of times, but he passed away. And so we tip our hats to to these people. They were all good people, but I just wanted to give a mention.
Absolutely. And, we were talking about Xavier. I don't know that we gave a proper tribute, but there's a lot of great Ring of Honor videos that pay tribute to his time in the ring, at least on Ring of Honor's youtube.com/Ring of Honor. You mentioned Todd Sinclair in the draft, and we were talking about how Todd, you'd spoken to Todd about the feedback, and we had another story about the carnival. And
yes, so back in about 2011, I was going on one of my numerous Jethro Tull trips. And when I would do these West Coast trips, it would have to be like a special kind of, they were playing Red Rocks.
Oh, okay.
So not only were they playing Red Rocks, they were also coming venue. To, you ever been there?
No, but I've seen concert after concert. Everybody films their specials there.
Yeah. AJ, you... Yeah, it's definitely a bucket list for, even if Donnie and Marie were playing, well, it's just very special.
I would tie a yellow ribbon around the old yellow tree.
That wasn't them? Pull you out.
No, that wasn't them?
That's Tony Orlando.
Oh, okay. All right.
But so from Red Rocks, I was with another friend, my friend Luke, and...
Just the Luke that I know?
Not
Bushwhacker Luke?
No.
Okay.
A local friend. And we went from there, and then we flew to Vegas. There was no Tull show in Vegas, but we flew to Vegas.
Oh.
Spend a couple days in Vegas.
Yeah.
And, Todd's a rock fan, but he's not a Tull fan. But, he's obviously aware of them. You know what Todd's favorite group is?
Isn't it Baby Metal? That group in
Japan? That's one of his, but I think like his all-time rock.
I don't.
Faith No More.
Oh, you know what? I would have. And it gave me a couple minutes. I would have guessed that.
Yeah. So we flew to Vegas, and we met Todd, and we spent a couple days in Vegas. A lot of fun, and then we drove. Did we drive or fly? But there was another show at another famous place that's so famous I'm not gonna, the Greek Theater in LA.
Oh yeah.
That's another classic venue. Very, very interesting venue because it's an amphitheater similar to the beautiful Camden,
right,
or the PNC.
Sure,
but it's smaller. It's like maybe 7,000 capacity.
Okay, but
here's the thing: it's in a really nice neighborhood of LA.
Oh,
and it's on this there. It's like it would be, not that I'm in such a fancy neighborhood, but it would be like turning onto my street and going towards the end, and at the end is a dead end, and that's where the amphitheater is.
Really?
And these are very expensive homes.
Sure.
And to buy a house if you have a house on that street, they have, because of the better weather, if the PNC under normal years would have, 40 shows, they may have 60 shows.
Jeez.
But so we were going to go to that show, but we had some time to kill during the day. So we had a hotel in Santa Monica that was near Venice Beach.
Nice.
And Venice Beach is another classic. Have you been there?
I've been there. Yes, I've been to Venice Beach. Yes.
And our producer AJ has been there also. And this is back in 2011, and I don't think it had been there. It was a new addition to the boardwalk, besides the medical marijuana, which was a new addition to the boardwalk. And I was completely clean and sober at the time. And I was sort of shocked that it was a gimmick. It was, you had to see a doctor. So on the I don't know if you guys were there, they were doing this. I think it's completely legal now. There were these hawkers on the boardwalk going, "The doctor's in, the doctor's in."
Ah.
So you would go in and say, "Ooh, my finger hurts." And, you pay the doctor $60, and then they give you the card and go downstairs and buy the weed. Which I wasn't interested in. But what I was interested in was there was a Venice Beach freak show. And this was a real, as we were speaking, I was on the last episode I mentioned last year, they had the live freak show in Allentown just with 4 performers. Mm-hmm. This was, they maybe had a dozen performers, including a wolf boy.
Wolf boy.
They had the walking on glass routines. Wow. And the fire breathers and the sword swallowers. But they had some animal oddities.
Really?
Yes. And we were very blessed because the day that we went there, it was a 2-headed frog.
Wow.
A 2-headed tortoise, something. And they were having a birthday party.
Really?
So we were in the building, and as we were exiting, unbeknownst to us, there's a mariachi band. And there's a very famous Merle Haggard. If you know this one, I'm going to give you a lot of kudos. There's a very famous Merle Haggard song that's been covered by a lot of these. They've been covered by rock bands, Poncho and Lefty. Oh. And it's a story of Poncho and Lefty, these characters that Merle Haggard had a very interesting life.
Sure, I know of Merle Haggard. I don't know the song though.
But it's a good song. But they had named these 2 little creatures Poncho and Lefty. And as we were exiting, there's the mariachi band, and we're like, "What's this?" And it's like the guys like, "Oh, it's a birthday party." And it was a birthday party for Poncho and Lefty.
What a blessed occasion.
It was a blessed occasion. Wow. That was freakdom at its finest, and paying tribute to these. And someone told me, or maybe it was Todd, he looked it up, that it was just their birthday the other day, last month.
Wow, still going strong.
Yeah, the Venice Beach Freak Show is not there anymore, but they've moved their location. Poncho and Lefty are still alive and well.
Wonderful. If it was a tortoise, I'm assuming they have a very large life expectancy, right? Or was Poncho and Lefty the frog?
They might have been frogs.
The frogs, okay. Because tortoises can live quite a long time.
So that was my additional thing that I thought of. Another thing was, I mentioned it briefly when we were in Coney Island. Kyle O'Reilly went with me.
Yeah.
When we went into the, and I wanted to do it when this ends, I'm going to go back to Coney Island. Have you ever seen the freak show at Coney Island, AJ? We're going to get them to talk one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have a good freak show. So, but yeah, Kyle and I went. I think Jerry Lynn went with us.
Okay.
And yeah, but we got some very nice feedback on that, as well as our episode about my interactions with John Belushi.
I didn't say it then. I bit my tongue. What an asshole.
Oh, yeah.
It's a tragic loss, but if you're just laser focused on anything, yet alone
just wasn't
cocaine.
a nice man.
Yeah.
Which made it, and we touched on this, that his friend Danny was such a nice man.
And I immediately looked up his friend Danny, and Danny is still very active. He's done everything. If there was one of those soft rock western songs from that Laurel Canyon area, that scene, there was like a 90% chance he wrote it, played guitar on it, and produced it.
And went beyond that also, as you were telling me.
Oh, it's crazy. He's producing things through the 2000s. He produced Hanson with the group of brothers, their band that went #1 on the independent rock charts. Just everything. He's done it all. He's played with everybody. He's recorded. He's probably the most famous man no one's ever heard of.
Yeah, and a great talent. And he was the polar opposite of Mr. Bellucci.
Yeah, stand up man. He's the Jerry Lynn of wrestling, underappreciated. Jerry Lynn of music, underappreciated and unsung hero, like glue guy, but star in his own right.
Yeah, so we want to move on, past the Bellucci thing. We've been trying to go in some linear order. We get sidetracked, like with the carnival here and there.
Right. Who doesn't let Pancho and Lefty?
Right. But I worked with another couple of bands, and I will probably backtrack at some point to my time with the Zap band.
I gotta ask you a question.
Yes.
There was a Zap band that had a pretty big hit called Radio.
Wasn't them.
Okay, just making sure.
These were nice, predominantly Jewish and Italian kids from the Oranges in Irvington, New Jersey.
Gotcha. The other group did some electric music that was more along what Parliament was doing. So
right.
Okay, just clarifying. Yeah.
And then I worked with this band Waterfront, which was another Jersey Shore, Leon Trent, who's still around. A mixture of disco, rock, dance music. Mm-hmm. They were good. And then when that gig ended, I had a brief. Once again, I was so involved with my cocaine addiction and these horror, being involved with these people and money and dealing, and it's terrible. Do not do this, folks.
Yeah.
It's just not good. But I was involved, and there was I took a job. I didn't even know why I took the job. There was a company called Jersey All Pro Stage Lighting, and there was a club in Asbury Park. Of course, you had Stone Pony. Mm-hmm. We mentioned Julio's, and there was another club in this boom period of the late 70s, early 80s, called the Fast Lane, and the guy from Jersey, from this lighting company, he sort of had a residency there. So whatever band was playing, and the pay was nothing, but I still liked the idea of the artistic end of the lighting, and he had some good equipment, and the club was set up nice, and your work, we're not on the theater level, but some of these rock clubs had proper, you needed the right ceiling height. Mm-hmm. Many of them didn't. You needed the right piping for, like bars to hang lights. There was no such thing as trees. And they would have, some of them would have these built-in trusses, which this place did. And I didn't last very long with this company, but during my short tenure, there was a band that came in called the Fabulous Poodles.
Oh.
Now, you're another one-hit wonder guy.
Sure, like the other Zap.
Right. Their one hit was a song called Mirror Star.
Huh.
You'll have to look it up.
I'll check it out.
But it was an FM, it made FM radio, and enough, they're from England, and enough for them to go touring.
Wow.
So at that show, they had a tour bus, and they were doing these, the Fast Lane was a nicer place. They had some gigs coming up, a couple nights at the Bottom Line.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And Better Club in Long Island, as well as other cities. It wasn't just the New Jersey, New York area. But anyway, the guy that was driving their bus, when I went to that particular evening, I went there with some merchandise, as I often did. And these guys didn't have any money, but the bus driver did.
Oh, okay.
And the bus driver's name was Whitey. And he was I approached them, and he's like, yeah.
Was his name Whitey because of his cocaine affinity? Just making sure.
He was white. So we had this little transaction, and I did the gig with the Poodles, and Whitey says to me, "Listen, man, I asked him. I knew that this isn't going to be a full-time gig working with the Poodles."
Sure.
I said. He goes, "Yeah. I'm just doing this now." He goes, "I drive for Rush."
Oh. He
goes, "But we're on break," and I'm like, "Oh wow, cool." And I was a this was right when was it the Permanent Waves album, the one with Limelight and Tom Sawyer?
Is it 2112?
2112 was definitely out.
Okay.
But Moving Pictures?
Oh, Moving Pictures. That's the name of the album.
It was in that era. And so Whitey says to me, if Rush comes to town, please, come see me, and he was a nice, certainly he was interested in the product, but he was generally a very nice man. So my gig with the lighting company came to an abrupt end. I had another gig, which we are going to give some more time to, but not tonight. And I mentioned them was this band Crystal Ship.
Sure. That
was doing a Doors tribute. And the Doors were having some kind of resurgence for whatever reason, I don't know. But the Doors always, am I safe to say they always have seemed to be in fashion? Yeah,
they're relatively timeless, which is interesting because a lot of their stuff's relatively avant-garde. Their radio hits play really well. But
why do you think that is?
I don't. Maybe Jim Morrison he's got the look. He's captured in time. No one can ever replace 24 to 27-year-old Jim Morrison. He never had a chance.
I'll definitely give you that. And I think another reason is that these Doors songs, you might say, "Oh, light my fire." I don't think is a good representation, but some "L.A. Woman," the Crystal Ship song itself. Come on, throw me some Doors songs.
Break on through to the other side.
I think these songs, if they came out today, they're pretty much as fresh as they were in the 60s. And, people really like them. So I had this gig with Crystal Ship, which due to my condition, not having my shit together, I didn't hold very long. It was a couple of weeks.
Did you start to have any relationships fall apart with your family? We haven't really talked about that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. What was it like with your father? I know you admired him a lot.
They were disgusted.
Yeah.
They were disgusted, and I was, as you use the term, couch surfing. And they were also great enablers.
Oh.
And I was the only kid. And they tried to look the other way, but it's hard to look the other way when you're a real mess.
Oh.
So yeah, things weren't good with that. So what happened? Now we're going to get back to Whitey.
Sure.
What happened after Crystal Ship was, this is really strange. I had an uncle. It was cousin, really, but you call him uncle. My uncle Billy, Bill Heyer. Now, this is on my mom's side of the family. I might not even have I don't think I've told AJ this story. And Billy this is 1980-ish, and he had lifelong addiction problems also. Alcoholism. He was a musician. He was a writer, and he was around people in the 50s, 60s, right up that were just like the jazz musicians of the 30s and 20s, 30s and 40s. There were drugs around,
Right.
So he was exposed to all this and participated in this, and but he'd gotten his shit together, and he was a lyricist, and he had a small time, wasn't that small. He had an off-Broadway, he would do like commercials.
Oh.
And, he had been a musician, a failed musician. He'd done this, done that, maybe did a little session work. But he hooked up with this partner of his who did the music, and Billy did the lyrics, and they had an off-Broadway show called Tuscaloosa's Calling, But I'm Not Going.
Oh.
And if you Google it, I think it played at the Village Gate.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right? You know what I'm talking about?
I do, yeah.
Right, on Bleecker Street.
Yeah.
And if it didn't play at the Village Gate, it was at a respectable off-Broadway house. And it had a pretty good run, and it had some notoriety. It was sort of a story about, and this is late 70s, mid to late 70s, when New York was, really rough. But I knew, so the title Tuscaloosa's Calling, But I'm Not Going is in reference to, as messed up as things might be in New York City, even, Tuscaloosa's Calling, I'm still staying in New York. So Billy knew a guy named Chuck Heffler. Chuck Heffler was a serious lighting and scenic design guy. And his claim to fame was in the mid to late 70s on Broadway. There was a show called Beatlemania.
Okay.
And Beatlemania played on Broadway for, I think, a couple years. But the thing was, it was the first show. Now, you're talking about the period when, lighting was getting more advanced. We mentioned about the Very Light with Genesis, the moving light. But Chuck's thing was, there was a term back then, multimedia. So not only would he use lighting, he would use slide. Not that this was never done before. You had those old Fillmore shows with the how could I even describe, like the psychedelic backgrounds.
Yeah.
But he took it to the next level with slide projection, film, as well as lighting, and where they did this Beatles recreation. It wasn't cheesy. It was well done. I didn't see it, but it was well reviewed. So my Uncle Bill knew Chuck Heffler, and his messed up nephew / cousin, who was an acclaimed lighting technician.
There you go.
He knew that I needed break. Now, Chuck Heffler needed me like a hole in the head. But in 1980, Chuck had got on the heels of Beatlemania and his name coming to the forefront more. He got a contract to do a Broadway show, and the name of it was It's So Nice to Be Civilized. And if you didn't hear of it, I'll give you a pass, because I'll tell you a little bit about it. But when it opened, opening night, they did the previews, like all Broadway shows do, like 2-3 weeks of previews to, work out the kinks.
Right.
And it ran for 5 days.
Oh, wow. Barely beating Spider-Man.
Right. So the reason Chuck hired me was he sort of needed a gopher.
Okay.
Someone to run around.
Yeah.
And plus he was doing his friend Bill a favor.
Oh.
And Chuck had a studio that was on 22nd between 5th and 6th.
I used to work in that area. I used to work on 22nd and Broadway.
And he was on, one of those many buildings it was an apartment that he had, but it was large. He turned it into a studio, and he hired me mercifully.
Oh.
And so I was there during the production period for this show. So It's So Nice to Be Civilized. They were going to, one of the selling points, because they knew the show wasn't that strong. It was a musical, and it was a black cast, and they had 3 names in it that are not household names, but if you Wikipedia or Google them, they have these tremendous credentials. One of them is Vivian Reed, who has a laundry list, even though it's a name that's not spoken about. She's got a laundry list of Broadway credits and movie credits. Another guy, his name was Oba Babatunde,
wow,
who also had movies, Broadway, TV, and there was a lady named Mabel King. Now, there's a slight chance you might know her from a short-lived sitcom called What's Happening?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Right, and she played the grandmother in What's Happening.
Gotcha.
And so they had a decent cast.
Yeah.
And they wanted Chuck to integrate this multimedia to give this thing a different look. And he did a good job, but it didn't help in the long run.
Now, at the time, we see things that are, for instance, Hamilton, right? Almost entirely black cast. It's intended for all audiences, but there is an idea that hopefully this would, help bring more folks of color to Broadway, both in the cast and the audience. At the time, was that a strategic initiative? Was there a black Broadway and a white Broadway?
At the time, I probably didn't think that way.
Okay.
But I think this was the kind of show that would draw,
primarily
multi. It would. It's like we went and saw Ain't Too Proud to Beg.
Right.
Right.
Well, yeah,
you didn't.
I didn't. The Lethals did.
Okay. Well, right. But AJ, you saw it, right? Right. And it's a very mixed crowd.
Yep.
And the same with this. This was light. It was. It had its comedy, had its social significance, but it didn't draw anybody.
Nah, yeah, that's what decides if you stay or not.
But where does this all tie in with Whitey? Right,
the lighting,
right.
The lighting.
So, but it was really cool getting to see all this stuff being done.
Yeah,
and I remember being at one of the rehearsals where Chuck was, they're doing the musical rehearsals, and then it came time. It was at the Martin Beck Theater, which is on 45th, right off 8th. Moulin Rouge is currently playing there.
That's a good location.
Yeah,
it's a really good location.
I remember the first time Chuck was going to show the cast some of this stuff, and when he would do the projection, there was a scene that was taking place like in a living room. And whatever Chuck was using, I can't remember, but I remember Vivian Reed, who was the lead, saying this because the cast is in the audience watching. He goes, she said, and you've heard the line, she says, well, I guess you could take us out of the ghetto, but you can't take the ghetto out of us, right?
Oh, geez.
She was like a little offended by the way.
By the quality of what was being presented.
Or just the image.
Right.
And but there was some really cool stuff in it. Probably boring our listeners to death, but that's all right.
I can't. This will be the only podcast that's ever been about.
Well, there's this stuff called scrim. So where you show an image, and if it's like it's projected once and it goes through to yet another.
Oh,
so he would have at this there was one scene that took place in church, and he had 5 layers of this scrim with this stained glass image, which was just stunning because it was it was 1, 2, 3, going
wow.
Layers of it was really cool. But anyway, I got a credit in the playbill.
Wow.
I wish I had the damn thing.
We'll find one.
I don't know. You're an eBay.
I'm an eBay hawk, yeah.
Yeah, this is a that would be a rarity.
I'll set an alert for it.
So I'm working with Chuck, and this was from March. The show opened. It was June of 1980. Well, in May of 1980, Rush is coming to the Academy of Music / Palladium for 2 nights. So this Fabulous Poodles thing had been a year before that.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, well, this is my chance to go see Whitey.
Well, let's walk us through, because now you could just email Whitey. You could text Whitey.
Now, yes,
now you could. Yeah, but what do you do? I mean, that seems odd to me that you'd keep some. But I guess with the prospect of meeting Rush, you'd keep somebody's number, or you'd find a way to get a hold of them.
Well, there was the only way to get hold of them would be to go to the theater. And I knew that, they were loading in early in the morning, and the buses and trucks would be on 13th Street.
Yep.
On the, the back.
The now secret NYU gym entrance.
Secret NYU gym entrance. Okay.
Yeah.
So Shredded Ed.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah, I had to lean on him, the worst guy to lean on. But
and the relationship was still kind of one-sided, right?
Well, it was never good. Yeah. I mean, I was always in the hole, but I was with Shredded Ed, and I told him, look, he didn't know who Rush was. I said, look, these guys are going to buy, you know, the usual. So they're going to buy a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. And he gave me, he just happened to had re-upped, as they said. So he gave me an ample amount of stuff and said, you better not fuck this thing up. And he goes,
shout out to the camel's wife who gave him the same advice.
Yeah, yes. And then Chuck, Ed wanted to meet me after the Rush show. And I don't know what the hell I was thinking. At this point, I knew Chuck Heffler. I'd been working with him for 3-4 months. He'd been exposed to everything in his life. Mm-hmm. He'd been in the show business, in the theater world, and he was an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. Now, I used to, like, about 1 PM, I would hear the Ice Cubes.
Oh.
And he was a Scotch drinker. He was a man. So he was a Scotch drinker. And, the Ice Cubes would start banging around 1 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
And so I told Shredded Ed, well, I'll meet you on 22nd. I had this idea that, like, maybe I'll bring Ed up to meet Chuck. Like, it was just right, because Chuck's seen it all. But it wasn't good. But anyway.
I don't know that anybody wants to meet Shredded Ed.
Well, so I go to the show. I go down to the Palladium, mm-hmm. and there's the trucks, there's the buses, and I'm just sort of standing around, and I see someone getting off the bus, and it's Whitey. Mm. I'm like, "What's up, man?" He's like, "Oh, Cary, how you doing? Oh, cool." Well, I came at the right day, because here's the thing: if you come at the wrong day, these guys might not have gotten paid.
Oh, okay.
So it might have been, the end of the week. We're getting paid tomorrow, but I hit the right day, and I really didn't have. And here's the other thing: he drove the bus for them, but he drove Rush's bus. Rush was driving city to city. Okay. The tour was set up so New York 2 nights. They were just below the stadium, the arenas yet.
So it would be what Ring of Honor does when the New Japan talent comes over, where we're about 2 to 3 hours away. We just take a bus.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so they would 2 nights at the Academy of Music, 2 nights at the Tower Theater. Mm-hmm. Then they're going to go to Washington to the Warner Theater, so on and so forth. And Whitey drove the guys from Rush's bus.
So he's got Geddy Lee. He's got everybody in there.
Neil Peart,
yeah.
Alex Lifeson. And, if it would have been like, ooh, he drove for the Stones, or, he drove for Led Zeppelin, or he drew even, Black Sabbath. It's like, even though I knew their songs were getting they had been getting FM airplay, but once again, I believe if you look it up, this is right when Spirit of the Radio and Limelight were coming out, mm-hmm. and were really hitting big, and so I find Whitey, and he takes me onto the bus, and they were inside doing rehearsal. Okay. Mm-hmm. And he says, "What do you have?" I said, well, what do you want? And basically, they, thankfully for me and for my later meeting with Shredded Ed, they basically bought me out.
Wow.
It was like, the perfect storm. And the thing was, I had to meet Ed at like 10 o'clock, and I don't remember who was opening up for them. I should know this, but I don't. We can look it up. But the only guy, we're on the bus, and we're in the front of the tour bus. Have you been on one of these tour buses? Sure you have.
Yeah, they're massive.
They've got the lounge past the driver's area. Then you've got the bunks.
Right.
And then in the back, there's like another lounge. Mm-hmm. So we're in the first lounge area, and he's got curtains. There's curtains up. And the only guy that got on the bus was Neil Peart. Mm-hmm. And if he knocked me over, I wouldn't,
He was the drummer, right? Famously has the 360 drum set.
Right.
Kit, yeah.
And the stuff, like I'm in his house.
Right.
And the stuff's laying out, on the table. Obviously, Whitey was, and he's like, Whitey, like, Neil, this is a good friend of mine. This is Cary. And Neil Peart shakes my hand. Oh, how are you? I go, good. I go. And I didn't really know what to say, except I'm thinking I'm sitting in this guy's house. There's a pile of cocaine out, So the only thing I thought to say was, would you like some? And he's like, yeah, I would, but after the show. So I did what I had to do with Whitey. Neil moseyed off towards the back. There wasn't a lot of conversation at all. I didn't try to make believe I was a huge Rush fan and it's so cool meeting you. He was just very little different than us sitting here tonight. Hey, what's up?
Yeah.
So they gave me passes, a pass, right? And I remember, whoever was the opener, damn, I should know this. But regardless, I got to see them like the first 45 minutes of their set. And it was great.
Yeah.
Right. And I met this guy, their lighting guy. I remember this guy, Howard. I met him. And I had an awareness of lighting without, and they were not using the Very lights, as we mentioned, that Genesis brought in like around the same year, but it was sort of patented at that time. They were just using the old standard light with the gel, but they had enough of them. And I remember talking to Howard at some point, and he said it was like, yeah, we're using like 175 lamps.
Wow.
Which compared, like, you ever see these old Queen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where there are no Very lights, but they're using like 800 lamps.
Right. Especially like We Will Rock You. Those music videos have all the, you can tell what kind of lighting they're using on those.
But this guy made the most of them. So I go back. So now it's like I'm looking at, I might have had a watch, or I asked the guy next to me, what time is it? So it's like 5 to 10. So I'm like, oh, damn, I got to leave. I got to go meet Shredded Ed, So I left, and Whitey had told me, before when I was on the bus, he said to me, listen, if you ever want to come, just come look for me. You're welcome. He goes, he was nice. He says, even if you don't have nothing, it's all right. Just come around.
Yeah.
So, but their tour was heading to Philly, and then it was heading south. So the next, he gave me their schedule, which had a show in Allentown.
Okay.
And it was not during the fair. It was like September 26th or something. It was a one-off.
Interesting.
And
was it at Ag Hall?
No, it was at the grandstand.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so I go back to 22nd Street, and now Shredded Ed is there. And he's with this other guy, this guy David, who's like right out of Goodfellas.
Uh-oh. That doesn't sound good.
That's just is the way he looked.
Right, but if you, yeah.
So, and I was flying high. I had all his money. Somehow, in conjunction with this, I knew Chuck was having people over that night. And so I said to Chuck earlier, I might, is it cool if I stop by later? Like, I'm going to be in the city. I told him I was going to this show. Like, he let me go early.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. He goes, yeah, sure. So I meet Ed, and I bring him. Him and this guy.
You fucked up.
Well, as it turned out, I didn't, because these well, yes and no. Chuck was probably in his late 50s, and despite his drinking, he was a very well-read, very he just knew his shit. But he had like 4 or 5 people up there from the arts world or friends of his. And so when I brought these other guys, I'm like, hey, Chuck, these are 2 of my friends. This is Ed. And Chuck's just looking at the guys. Man, I was like, Chuck was probably on his 14th Scotch on the rocks for the day. And so I told Ed, and I said, don't whip anything out. I said, I'll ask.
Yeah.
So I asked Chuck, I said, listen, you think these people want to do a hit of some cookies? He goes, well, ask them.
Wow. So
there we are. I don't know. These were these artsy fartsy New Yorkers.
Yeah.
And we didn't stay there too late.
Yeah.
Once again, the Billy Joel, we didn't want to go over the line. I knew it was time to go home. So it was a successful first round with Rush.
Wow. I know we had some notes on UFO and on some of the other bands as well, like Thin Lizzy, and we'll save those for next time. But I'm just going to do some rapid fire.
Sure.
Around this time, we're talking about some stadium level groups, but I'd asked about Southside Johnny in some previous episodes because you're at the Jersey Shore. New York City, but this time the Ramones are striking huge. Blondie's breaking through. Parallel Line's about to come out, and that puts them on the map with Heart of Glass and all that in, I believe, 78. Did you ever, I know you varied music tastes. Did you ever go down to CBGB's at this time? Steve Forbert?
Once.
Okay.
Once. Bonnie Parker, who I had been disenfranchised from,
okay,
was more than one, but in the Village, 3 blocks up from CBGB's was a club called the Great Gildersleeves. And for whatever reason, this club had these Jersey, Long Island classic rock bands, as opposed to the CBGB's and Max's Kansas City's,
right,
and all these other hip places.
Yeah.
The Ritz, and we went to see Bonnie Parker to say hello, and I was with that George guy, and I was like, why don't we go down to that CBGB's? And you know who was playing? maybe you guys don't even know who this is. Stiv Bators and the Dead Boys.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Wow.
So, and it was like Bonnie's last set ended. It was like, already like 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
So we got into CBGB's. It was at the point where they didn't charge admission. It's like, it's like there was a couple songs left, but I got to see Stiv Bators do his thing. Yeah. There was another odd name. One of the guys in the band had all kinds of crazy names. I can't name them off the top of my head.
Wow.
But yeah, that was my one CBGB's experience until I went back many years later, as we mentioned in the Bonnie Parker one, and I saw her at that at CBGB's. Those were my 2 times. Did you ever go?
My biggest regret about being there, it was that didn't go to CBGB's, and there were some good acts even through 05 and that.
I think our producer played there.
Really? Oh wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I'd gone to the Bowery Ballroom, and I'd gone to a lot of the venues. I think Max's Kansas City
that was probably defunct by then.
Yeah, I think that was gone by then. But Cafe Wah I had gone to, that was still open in the village, and the Blue Note was still around.
Well, that was a jazz club.
Jazz club, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you had the Village Vanguard.
Yeah,
I wasn't sophisticated enough.
I tried to be when the person of interest is sophisticated, you try and follow them to what they're interested in. I'll just say that.
Okay.
So the Blue Note wasn't really my thing, but I was interested in somebody that was interested in the Blue Note.
Well, I know we took a long, circuitous route in this edition of Last Stop Penn Station. I hope everybody's been enjoying these episodes. Please, if you enjoy these, rate us on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify. Mm-hmm. We have a YouTube channel. We have our very popular Last Stop Penn Station, and He Eats Breakfast, the Camel T-shirts, which are available on Pro Wrestling Tees. And I'm sure by now the Ian Riccaboni figure must be a collector's item.
I'll tell you what, there's a weird secondary market, and I keep advising people I've seen it go for $20, $25 on eBay, because it's sold out on Pro Wrestling Tees, because they did a wonderful job of marketing it over there as a way to get money to Bradbury Sullivan. What folks don't know, and I'm encouraging them to find out, is ROH Pro Shop still has a limited quantity, and I'm selling them autographed on IanRiccaboni.com. So if you want the autograph version, come to me. If you prefer a non-autograph version, it's a little bit cheaper. Go to ROHProShop.com.
Very good.
Yep, and I'll keep an eye out for that playbill.
Yeah, it's so nice to be civilized. I'd love to get that. I'd love to. I can't even find a set list from Joe Savage, but they never made a cast recording, that's for sure. But. Yeah, it was an interesting experience, and getting a credit in a playbill.
Amazing.
Who would have thunk it?
Yeah. Well, this has been an amazing journey. I'm sure next time we'll talk about.
Well, when we come back, we're going to come back to Allentown.
Wow. Okay.
Because we're gonna give you a little. I had a little bit. I had a lot more of a intimate experience with all the guys in Rush.
Wow.
And we'll tell you about that and some more.
And I have some 70s Allentown concert stories that my dad's passed down.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, before we close,
wait a minute.
You're gonna have to, listeners. You're gonna have to hold your hats.
It's the bonus content
because there's a Rod Stewart story that's been waiting to be told, and we're going to talk about it next week. So thank you for joining us this week.
Yeah, thank you, Cary. We'll hit Rod Stewart next week. It involves a soccer ball. It involves my mom's sister and some shattered dreams in the year 1984.
All right.
We'll leave it there. And the Allentown Fairgrounds, the Great Allentown Fair of 1984. So my brother was 5. I was not yet born, although I soon would be. And we'll tee it up there, and we'll talk about Rush and maybe Thin Lizzy, maybe UFO. We'll hit those groups as well. So and why Frank Zappa left Ag Hall. I have an interesting.
I want to hear that too.
Absolutely. We'll hit all that and more next week on Last Stop Penn Station. For Cary, I'm Ian. Happy wrestling, happy music. Rate, review, subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
I thank God it stole the handle, and the train it won't stop going. No, it just slowed down.
We hail you for listening to Last Stop Penn Station podcast. Rate, review, like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or at laststoppennstation.com.